Welcome to Sports Love Media on YouTube. It's your guy Sports Love with another video today. The Alabama High School Athletic Association softball regionals for high school softball will be taking place May 6th through 9th of 2024 in 4 different locations. It is divided up into North, South, Central, and East. The North Regional will be played in Florence. The South Regional will be played in Gulf Shores. The Central Regional will be played in Montgomery, and the East Regional will be played in Albertville. This regional tournament in each of the 4 locations is double elimination format. The winner and runner-up of the regional tournament from each of the 4 locations will advance to the state tournament that will be held May 13th through 17th at Choccolocco Park in Oxford. Let's look at see who will be playing in opening rounds of the regionals. These regionals are for all classifications, Class 1A through 7A. We'll start with the North Regional. 1A, Lynn versus Cherokee, Hackleburg versus Athens Bible, Meek versus Belgreen, Waterloo versus Marion County. 2A, Summerton Christian versus Lexington, Winston County versus Falkville, Lindsay Lane Christian Academy versus Red Bay, Hatton versus Locust Fork. 3A, Gordo versus Mars Hill Bible, Winfield versus Danville, Madison Academy versus Colbert Heights, Lauderdale County versus Oakman. In 4A, Curry versus Westminster Christian, West Morgan versus Central High School in Florence, West Limestone versus Hamilton, Brooks versus Priceville. In Class 5A, it'll be Jasper versus Arab, Springville versus Russellville, AP Brewer versus Pleasant Grove, Lawrence County versus Hayden. In 6A, it'll be Mortimer Jordan versus Athens, Buckhorn versus Muscle Shoals, Hartselle versus Fort Payne, Hazel Green versus Coleman. In Class 7A, it'll be Hewitt Trussville versus Bob Jones, Austin versus South Park. Now we'll go to the South Regionals. In Class 1A, Leroy versus Milry, Kinston versus Red Level, Brantley versus Elba, Sweetwater versus Fruitdale. In 2A, JU Blackshire versus Luverne, Wicksburg versus Oriton, GW Long versus Sampson, Zion Chapel versus Clark County. In Class 3A, Cottage Hill Christian Academy versus Excel, Providence Christian versus Strawn, Opp versus Ashford, Thomasville versus Flomation. In 4A, Orange Beach versus Lamp, Satsuma versus Slocum, Houston Academy versus T.R. Miller, Montgomery Catholic versus Mobile Christian. In Class 5A, it's Gulf Shores versus Holtville, St. Paul's Episcopal versus Headland, Rehoboth versus Faith Academy, Brubaker Tech versus Alberta. Saraland versus Benjamin Russell start the Class 6A. Spanish Fort versus Park Crossing, Pike Road versus Baldwin County, Wetumpka versus Theodore. In Class 7A, it's Mary G. Montgomery versus Enterprise, Dothan versus Baker. For the Central Region, you have Keith versus Lochapoka, Maplesville versus Berry, Wadley versus Central High School in Hayneville, South Lamar versus Verbena. In 2A, you have Horseshoe Bend versus Soligent, Thorsby versus Vincent, Lamar County versus Reeltown, Southeastern versus Isabella. In Class 3A, you have Southside in Selma versus Beulah, St. James versus Indian Springs, Randolph County versus Greensboro, Childersburg versus Alabama Christian Academy. In Class 4A, you have Prattville Christian versus Sipsey Valley, Bibb County versus Munford, Northside versus Dallas County, Handley versus American Christian Academy. In Class 5A, you have Beauregard versus Sylacauga, Marbury versus Ramsey, Shelby County versus Tallahassee, John Carroll Catholic versus Demopolis. In Class 6A, you have Calera versus Pelham, Hillcrest of Tuscaloosa versus McAdory, Helena versus Stanhope, Elmore, and then Brookwood versus Northridge. In Class 7A, it will be Daphne versus Auburn, Central Phoenix City versus Fairhope. In the East Regionals, you will have Appalachian versus Valley Head starting things off in Class 1A, Also in 1A, Ragland versus Cedar Bluff, Spring Garden versus Coosa Christian, Skyline versus Victory Christian. In Class 2A, Pleasant Valley versus North Sand Mountain, West End versus Fife, Sandrock versus Cleveland, Pisgah versus Woodland. In Class 3A, you have Piedmont versus Geraldine, Hoax Bluff versus Vinemont, J.B. Pennington versus Glencoe, Plainview versus Weaver. In Class 4A, Corner versus Aniana, White Plains versus North Jackson, Cherokee County versus Cordova, Madison County versus Jacksonville. In Class 5A, you have Moody versus Boaz, Alexandria versus Guntersville, Southside versus St. Clair County, and Scottsboro versus Central of Clay County. In Class 6A, you have Mountain Brook versus Oxford, Minor versus Huffman, Gardendale versus A.H. Parker, and then Pell City versus Homewood. And then finally, in Class 7A, you have Hoover versus Sparkman and Huntsville versus Thompson. Anyway, that's the regional lineup and preview for the Alabama High School Athletic Association High School Softball Regionals, which is being held this week, May 6th through 9th of 2024. Anyway, with that, thank you for taking the time to hear the preview of the regionals that will be going on for Alabama High School softball in the 4 regions across the state between May 6th through 9th. If you will, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware of when I'm going over regional schedules in a preview, when I have sports education videos, when I have sports action videos, when I have breaking news that affects the sports world. Anyway, thank you and have a wonderful day.